Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unholy Mole and Bad Tempered Badger's Underground Apostate Hour. It's probably going to be more than an hour. It's just we thought the name was cool. But we're gonna talk about PC culture and obviously probably talk about some atheism and maybe look at a few Answers to Genesis articles. And I found another really cool website called Debunking Disbelief. And we're going to look at a few articles on there. But first, we're going to talk about PC culture. And my first thing I'd like to say is being politically correct good for anything? What are some of the pros and cons of PC culture? What do you think, Badger?
Well, PC culture, we should probably define what we're talking about.
Fair enough.
There's the whole debate about whether it's just being nice to people or whether it's specific rules and restrictions put on speech, or whether it's there's certain things you can't or shouldn't say or anything like that. I think for the purposes of discussing its negative aspects, it's necessary to acknowledge that it includes things like rules and regulations placed on speech and actions that aren't always a good thing.
Right. I would say let's define political correctness as like what is socially appropriate. That's subjective. But what are the base rules? I guess you could say. Sometimes being politically correct has a place, but other times it doesn't. I mean, you can't be politically correct about everything, but you should use tact when speaking. But you should never be silenced, though. I mean, but say what you're going to say tactfully. You know?
Tact is a very underrated thing in modern conversations.
Right, you're right. It is pretty much. What does society deem as politically correct today, right now? What do you think the definition is?
Well, let's have a little look. There's two. If I'm trying to figure out what a word means that I don't know, or one that I want to have a sort of a generally accepted definition on, I generally I start off with the Oxford English Dictionary, and then I go to Urban Dictionary.
All right, fair enough.
So, Oxford English says political correctness, the principle of avoiding language and behavior that may offend particular groups of people. And then usage, for reasons of political correctness, we have been asked to withdraw our advertisement from the national press. And then the first one in Urban Dictionary is a way that we speak in America so we don't offend whining pussies.
That's pretty much what it is. Okay. I mean, that's pretty much what I said. What is socially acceptable to say in America or in the world today? Let's say in the Western world. We don't live in the Eastern world, so I don't really have no idea what's politically correct there. Nor do I think it's even close to the same as what would be politically correct here. Now, do you think there are any
different culture?
Do you think there are any good points for political correctness?
Oh, absolutely. I think, as you mentioned, I think tact is a good thing, and I personally think it's very underrated and underused. I think a lot of particularly on Twitter and on the other places where the discussions between theists and atheists often happen, I think a lot of it devolves into just shouting matches quite quickly because nobody's got any tact.
Right, exactly.
So it's perfectly possible to have a conversation about a difficult topic without everybody ending up shouting at each other.
Right. I think that people don't know the difference between constructive criticism and just plain old being a dick to someone. Like you can criticize someone without, even if it does hurt their feelings, you can do it without being a dick. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with criticizing a person's because of their ideas. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that ever. That should never be fucking taboo in my eyes. But I mean,
I'm all for constructive criticism.
Right, and I think that a lot of people in today's society don't like to take responsibility for their own actions. So they, do you think? Okay, let's put it. Do you think that people truly are disgusted by the okay, let's just take the far left as an example, or the far right. They're both pretty much the same thing now, just different sides of the same coin. But do you think that they are really outraged by all these things, or do you think it's just something for them to feel included in, them to be a part of? Do you think it's just like a fate? I mean, they're young, they're in their early 20s. I'm not trying to talk shit on, but when I was that age, I was very impressionable, and I just wanted to fit in. So, I went through my fucking, I was in my early 20s in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I was like, I was a metalhead. I had the chain wallet and the fucking long hair and Jinko jeans, And I mean, would I wear that today? Fuck no, I mean, I was fucking, I'm not the same person I was when I was in my early 20s. So what I'm getting at is, do you think that they believe the shit they're spewing? I guess I should say.
Well, I think some do and some don't. I'm gonna I don't know where you, I know we've had a few conversations, but I don't think we've really been over our sort of political leanings in detail. I personally, I tend to fall more on the left than on the right politically, but I try to look at each individual issue on its own individual and distinct merits. I try not to, play politics as a team sport. I try to actually think about each issue as it comes.
Right.
But I do, if you look at, I think, if you were to look at all the various positions I hold on things, I tend to be more left than right.
Right. Well, I have two for the most part. I mean, go ahead and finish, though. I'll tell you in a second.
Oh, yes. But I think, as well as that, a lot of people don't like to really think about difficult issues, so they will look at it as a kind of team sport and just go, right, I'm going to pick whichever side of this my team says is the best one. And I think as to whether they believe it or not, I think a lot of them haven't really thought about it, and they're just following along with the team, as it were. For example, an issue that I'm going to pass back to you, actually. What would you say is a common issue that causes a lot of angry discussion?
Okay. Let's go with immigration.
Oh, there we go.
Immigration is definitely a hot topic.
Oh, yes. You could say it's in the news a little. Well, I think with that, it's very divided along party lines by a lot of people who don't want to actually think about it and just want it to be solved.
Right.
So people who normally... Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I think they're trying to simplify immigration way too much. It's a very, very complex issue, especially in America, where Mexicans can not freely move, but it's not hard for them to get here. I mean, it's hard, but but they get here. Let's just put it that way. And say they've been here for 25 years, right? And they have jobs, and their children have fucking grew up in America. They're college students, and then something were to happen and they want to deport them. Come on, really, dude? I mean, that's a little bit of a sticky situation. Can you really call them? I mean, especially the children, they're born on American soil, so technically, wouldn't that make them an American citizen?
Well, I don't know how things are legally in terms of all the minutiae and the details of it. I'd say, if they came across illegally in the first place, there's something, it's a little bit awkward. That's an awkward situation from every angle you look at it as. But definitely the children at that point, however their parents got there, they were born there.
Right, but I mean, like, if they've been here for 25 years, I mean, I'm like, that's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to like add a complexity to it to show you. I mean, it's just not that simple. I mean, like, if the parents
allowances need to be made,
they've never committed a crime, and if they get caught for something petty like drunk driving, and they want to deport them over that. I mean, they need to take into account, okay, well, how long have they been here? Can't they like figure out a way to grandfather them into the country? They have roots.
They might have done a lot of good things for the country while they've been there.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's got to be a way that they can. I mean, there's got to be special allowances made. Like, I think they should look at stuff on a case-by-case basis. I know that would be a lot of work, but people are worth the time and the effort. I mean, they're people. No matter what that should be first and foremost in our fucking heads. They're people. That's the main issue. Is they're people. We can't treat them like, subhumans.
I think treating people as numbers and statistics is a lot of what's wrong with modern politics.
Yeah, and I think technology has a big part to blame in that. To be honest with you, because I mean, like, and that's another thing I think that people get so outraged so easily now is that, like, 30 years ago, like, by the time, like, say a riot at, like, there would be no Antifa and shit like that. It just wouldn't happen because people couldn't organize like they can now. They're so easily organizable that, I mean, I don't think that the world was a totally different place 30 years ago. It just was.
Oh, yeah. It's a completely different situation now. And, my experience with technology has vastly changed over the last few decades.
Right. Yeah,
I'm conservative, as it were, in my use of technology. If you compare me to a lot of people of my sort of generation.
Right.
Well,
you mean like
I don't have
Snapchat and all that crap?
I don't have a mobile internet service. If I'm out of the house, I'm not on the internet.
Oh, neither do I. My phone dies too quick when I use the internet on my phone, so I'm like, fuck it. I don't need the internet that much when I'm away from my house. As long as I can call and text people, that's enough, But I am on the internet all the time, though. I'm not gonna lie, I am on the internet all the time.
Oh yeah.
But that's my television. I watch like Netflix and YouTube movies instead of watching television. So I mean.
Yeah. Well, the point there is, for me, it's important that when I'm not, if I'm outside, I'm out to do something that's not what I do when I'm inside.
Right, exactly. That's I don't understand children today. Like when I was like, say like 10, 12 years old, I was never home, dude. Like as soon as I got up in the morning, I would fucking run out the door, and I would be gone until fucking it was nighttime. Then I'd come home. Like I don't understand how kids are inside all the time. I was always outside, like riding my bike. I was usually up to no good, but I was always outside. I mean up to no good, like in a kid's way, like like
I know it.
Throwing rocks, and smoking cigarettes, and shit like that. I mean, I wasn't like robbing old ladies or nothing.
Shooting some b-ball up outside of the school.
So, do you think there is? Yeah. I'm from a little dinky ass town in the middle of a cornfield. So, but do you think there is a place for, or do you think that people just need to relearn the definition of political correctness? Do you think people are taking it too far?
Oh, absolutely, I do. Yes, and I have some examples of what I mean by taking it too far. For a start, it's a very divisive thing. It's very difficult. Are you okay there?
Yeah, I'm fine. Sorry, I was moving my. I have like a port. Them like TV trays you can fold out.
Oh
I got my laptop on top of one of them, and I was moving it. So
I thought Chewbacca would come in and eat it. So yeah, divisiveness. Open discussion is vital. It's vital to progress and to making sure that good things happen and bad things don't happen. And for example, pointing out bad ideas, it's impossible for good people with good ideas to counter bad ideas if those good people are at each other's throats about something trivial.
Right. Exactly. And that's exactly what's going on right now. Is people are, instead of listening to the opposition's ideas, they just stick their fingers in their ears and go la 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 la. I can't hear you, you know, and we're not getting nowhere like that.
Yep, nowhere at all. And that extends to things like just creativity. It being too politically correct and too focused on that as a goal stifles creativity. For example, the whole cultural appropriation thing.
Yes.
There is something to be said for being respectful of other cultures and not just taking bits of them willy-nilly and making a mockery of them. But there's also something to be said for cultural exchange.
Right. The world wouldn't be what it was today without cultural exchange. I mean, this even goes as far as when the Norse invaded fucking mainland Britain. I mean, yes, it was horrible what they did, but
raping and pillaging and all that business. Yeah.
But but everybody did that back then. I'm not trying to excuse that everybody was horrible back then.
Yeah.
But but look at the cultural exchange too. I mean, like, our modern day America wouldn't be here if that wouldn't happen. England would be a totally different place. I mean, you guys might be still speaking like Brythonic Gaelic or Celtic or whatever.
That's quite interesting, actually. I looked at a thing a while ago that was, what would English sound like if it had continued without all the other Latin-based languages coming in and polluting it, as it were. Yeah, there was a whole thing about what would English sound like if it continued only along its Germanic roots.
Or what if you go even further back than that? What if there was no Anglo-Saxon invasion? What if it was just Celtic? I mean, would everybody sound like they were Welsh or fucking like
they'd all be speaking Gaelic.
Yeah. So I mean, the world's a fucked up place back then, but it happened where it happened. It's just, so we can't take back what's happened.
No, you've just got to move forward from it. This is something I say when I'm talking about religions a lot as well, particularly about Christianity and its influence on Western cultures, is I will say, take the good bits and throw away the bad bits. So you've got to take the benefits of cultural exchange and build on those and try to mitigate all the negative things that have happened historically and still happen in many places today. You've got to try to get over the whole the negative things and use the positives.
Right. I mean, even as ardent atheist as I am, I have to admit that without the church, Western society would not be what it is today, because that was the one thing that brought all cultures together. That was the only reason that we advanced as much as we did. Yes, it held us back in certain areas, but there would have been no cultural exchange without the church. So even if people did come up, even if people did come up with ideas in isolated places, they would have never been able to find out about other people's ideas and build on them. So I mean, it's kind of like you said. I mean, give and take.
The church has done many divisive things throughout its history, but it's also, it's spread Western society across a great distance. And while the colonial aspect of that is not necessarily a good thing when you look back on it, the benefits of it in the modern world, you can't really, you don't just want to throw all them out because somebody did some nasty colonial shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, yes, a lot of bad shit happened, but that bad shit happening is what made the world what it is today. I mean, without it, the world would be a totally different place. I might still be here in America, but it would be a totally different America than what we're used to. I mean, would we have gained our independence eventually? Probably, but would it be the same? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. We could be speaking German right now or French, it's hard. It's really hard to say. I mean, what would have happened without the world being what it was?
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is the whole political correctness thing stifles scientific advancement.
Yes.
Because things, well, what I've written down is offensive ideas are shouted down even if they have merit.
Yeah. Especially by like science deniers, like what we're going to get into, like fucking like vaccine deniers or anti-vaxxers and creationists, and I mean all these climate deniers, all these people. I mean, are like, I mean, yeah, stuff's still being studied, but I think we could make a lot farther strides in it if there weren't people who in the idea.
Yeah, and that's coming from what would, you know, if you want to go with the whole left-right divide, that's science denial and the avoidance of things that are uncomfortable to talk about from the so-called political right.
Yeah, that's from the other side. So I mean,
an example of it from the so-called political left would be something that has just gone straight out of my brain as soon as I wanted to start saying it. Give me a second. What was it? Oh, that was it. The whole aspect of discussion around, let's just pick two subjects that this happens around: trans issues and racial issues. Any scientific discussion that's not everyone is 100% equal all the time is essentially just shouted down by everyone saying that's offensive.
Right. What do you think? Like that goes with. Actually, I like what they're talking about in chat. What I've gathered from it is they're saying that if you come over here and you serve your country, then that should fast track you to becoming a citizen. I'm pretty sure that's what they're talking about.
Here's the thing. Translators in Afghanistan and Iraq, local people from those countries who, when British and American forces were there doing the whole war on terror thing, translated for those foreign militaries. You know, your country's military and my country's military.
Right.
Those people are now at great risk because they are seen as traitors by a lot of the local people.
Right. We should protect them because of that.
But one guy in particular, I think he's still struggling to get a visa to move to the UK. And he's been struggling with that for years. And I can't remember a lot of some of the details, I'd have to look it up, but I think he's now got asylum somewhere in possibly France. But he should have been moved to the United Kingdom when the military pulled out of that specific area. He should have been taken with them.
If you put him in that predicament and you're using him as a pawn, the least you can do is let him come back to your country. The least you can do is let him come back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think several of his family have been killed. If I'm remembering the thing I read correct.
That's ridiculous. When nations use people as pawns, like we were talking about earlier, they're people. They're not just a statistic or a number. They're a fucking living, breathing person. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous.
That's something that is important to think about. In many different areas of life, like there's the debate about the NHS at the moment in my country.
Uh-huh.
The NHS was a brilliant idea at the time it was created, which was that everyone
was it right after World War II? Is that when they created the NHS? Was it right after World War II?
I'd have to check the dates exactly, but the idea was everyone pays their taxes to fund this medical service, so that at the point of delivery of the medical service, you don't have to pay for it.
Right.
So that if you suddenly find, for example, a warehouse worker who essentially has a subsistence style of living, he makes enough money to survive week to week, suddenly develops cancer. Cancer treatments cost for one treatment more than he makes in a decade.
Wow.
The NHS is there so that society as a whole is able to fund those treatments for him.
And they're not funding it for them at all, or they're not paying all of it, or what?
The problem now is there have been massive cuts to the NHS, so it can't afford to do it. It can't afford to do its job properly.
So how are they working that out with your guys' healthcare then? Do you guys have to pay do you have to pay a premium? Do they pay like so much percentage of something and you pay the rest?
That's complicated issue. That is being debated back and forth by politicians, doctors, administrators, and everyone in this country constantly at the moment.
Right, because you can't just give people free health care. Well, not free, but I mean, essentially, they paid for it already, but you can't give them 100% health care and then come back later and be like, oh, yeah, you know all that money you paid us? Well, fuck off. Yeah. You can't have your health care. I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, they have to do something.
I guess they'll die, you know?
Yeah, well, someone's going to die.
Looking at them as statistics rather than as people.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I'm trying to think of an example.
So why did they have to cut? Do you know why they had to cut the funding to the NHS?
Well, they didn't have to cut the funding to the NHS.
Or do you know why they cut the funding to the NHS? Or why they thought they had to cut it?
Elections. The previous government that the two major parties are the Labour and Conservative. The Conservative is more on the right and the Labour is more on the left. That's generally how it fits with the standard political left-right divide of looking at things. Now, I'm not super knowledgeable about all the intricacies of the politics of it, but I think around 2010, the Conservative Party was voted into power. I need to check that I'm not talking out my ass. Just give me a second.
Okay.
I think it was around 2010. But they are a more conservative government. And the idea, they're trying to cut back on spending, get rid of the deficit, as it were. You know, all the money that government borrows to pay for all the services it provides.
Right. America has a quite large one of them. I think our deficit's probably the largest in the world. I'm pretty sure we owe more money to everybody else than the entire world does. We're like trillions of dollars in debt. I'm sure you guys aren't far behind though.
Okay, 2015, 2010. Okay, yeah, it was 2010. The Conservatives took over government and started cutting back on everything. All kinds of government spending on a lot of services were cut back in order to try to reduce.
Are the Conservatives the Tories?
Yes, they're the Conservatives are the Tories. They're the blue ones.
Okay, and then the other party is the Labour Party, right?
The Labour Party is the red ones.
Yeah. Okay.
They are they're supposedly. That's the left-right divide in the UK, but it's actually quite considerably more complicated than that.
Right.
So the Conservative government massively slashed spending on the NHS, meaning the NHS is now unable to provide all the services it is required to provide under its mandate. So there are... there's a thing known as a general practitioner, which is the doctor that you would go to see.
Like your family doctor?
Yeah. It's not quite a family doctor, but it often is effectively that. You know, there's a GP surgery. You go to the GP surgery, and there's a few doctors there, nurses, general people who will give you checkups, do small medical procedures, minor medical procedures.
Our doctor's office are essentially the same. Like, okay, like my doctor, like there's like probably 4 different doctors in the building, and then there's also what's right under a doctor, which would be a nurse practitioner. So they're like pretty much almost doctors, but they're not quite like they're like doctors of nursing.
Yeah. Now there's so the idea is that you go to them for small things, and they refer you on to larger hospitals if you have something that they can't deal with. A lot of GP surgeries are closing down because the government is not funding them properly. And
there's no private healthcare sector in the UK, right?
There is.
There is a private healthcare sector?
There is a private healthcare sector. It's just not as prolific because most people use the NHS. Well, I say most. A lot of people use the NHS. I have, I think, had one private medical procedure, and almost everything else has been through the NHS. And the only reason I had that private medical procedure was because my GP surgery wouldn't do it, because it was essentially a cosmetic thing.
Right. So, and so it wasn't they didn't deem it medically necessary.
Yeah, it didn't deem it necessary for my continued survival. So so I had to pay for that myself.
Well, that makes sense, though. I mean, it does make sense.
That's the thing. I think that's part of the reason why British people are known for not having such amazing-looking teeth. Because dentists don't come under the NHS in the same way other medical procedures do.
Yeah, don't be fooled. All Americans don't have pearly whites. Maybe out in LA they do, but normal people, I mean, yeah, they have nicer teeth, but I mean, like, I never cared. I didn't want braces when I was a kid. I fucking, but my teeth are strong. That's what's important.
So
not that they're,
for example,
perfectly straight.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So for example, when I went to the doctor to have a checkup, that's free. When I go to the dentist to have a checkup, that costs me about 20 quid.
That's not too bad, though. $20.
But it depends. If they actually do anything, it costs considerably more.
Oh, I mean, but for just to be looked at, though, it'd be about $35 American dollars.
Your teeth are all right.
That's about $35 American dollars, right? 20 quid.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Oh, just answering that. Straight Sith Male says, "Hey Mole, who's the co-host?" And I said, "Me."
I told him who you were.
But just anyone who doesn't know who I am, hello, I am Bad Tempered Badger. I talk about things on the internet, and I'm a badger from England.
Yeah, we're the underground. We're in the underground. So, do you think that things are going to get progressively worse in the Western world with the political divisiveness because of people freaking out about everything?
I don't know, but I suspect in some ways they will. I think technology is going to have an impact on that, particularly social media, because everyone is able to so quickly find someone they disagree with and have a shouting match with them.
Sure.
If you live with people, you kind of have to be polite to an extent. Whereas I can find someone on the other side of the world who thinks that abortion's a good idea. Who thinks that banning abortion is a good idea, and I can have a shouting match with them with no repercussions to myself, because I don't have to live with that person afterwards.
Right. So what makes you? Why do you think both the left and the right are why do you think everything's so fucked up nowadays? What do you think caused political correctness to take over? I can't put my finger on one thing, but I have no idea how it blew up. I don't know what happened. I can't. I mean, maybe I'm too old and I just I missed it somewhere, and because I don't know what's going on in the younger people's world.
I'm not sure. I think technology is a part of it. I think there's that whole window, the Overton window, is it? With the whole what is currently acceptable to talk about shifting over time.
Yeah.
I think there's
I have a friend, Cabby, he's British as well, and I said that the internet is like a way for British people to to blow off steam, so they don't have to use to keep the stiff upper lip. I said the internet's a way for British people to fucking act like asses and get away with it. I was just joking, obviously. I'm sure you guys aren't stiff upper lip all the time.
Oh, well, the good ones are.
You do have football hooligans over there, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, like I said, the good ones are. England, certain members of
I love England.
people.
I love their fucking, like, some of their, like, was it General, was it who is it, was it the guy that won Waterloo, was it the Duke of Wellington that, like, was hanging out with the other guy, and the other guy had his leg blown off? He's like, oh dear me, I think they've just blown my leg off. Like
Oh dear.
Straight face, oh dear me.
Just they're like, oh bother.
I think they blew me bloody leg off. That's fucking crazy. Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, I think there is a certain aspect of British culture that we tend to export to other countries that isn't very good. It's the whole. It's people who don't really think about what they're doing, going to other places on holiday and making a mess of things. I think part of the problem with that is the ease of travel to other European countries has meant that a lot of people who really shouldn't be going to other places are.
Right. Well, I'm sure Americans are much worse, but at least we don't travel. Like most Americans never are not very traveled, thank goodness, because they would make a horrible impression on the rest of the world. They already hate us, and they have every right to. I mean, Americans are really they're ignorant when it comes to outside cultures. Like my mom is from Europe, so I grew up knowing a little bit more about Europe. But I mean, a lot of people are really dumb when it comes to other. Like, I mean, if you showed someone a map without the names on it, I bet you like 8 out of 10 adults couldn't like name 15 countries without the names on them. I almost guarantee it. I almost guarantee it. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
I did read a thing a little while ago. Just let me see if I can find it. It was about a study that was done. That is not how you open that, is it? The study that was done about people's opinions on political correctness. That's the topic. It's about people's opinions on political correctness and how a lot more people than you would suspect are actually hostile towards it. They're just not. There it is. This I'm going to be quoting some things from theatlantic.com. I don't know if anybody will tell me that's awful. You should never read that, but I just found this. Somebody linked it to me on Twitter, so I had a look. There was a study done by someone somewhere. Hidden Tribes, a study of America's polarized landscape. There it is. Says that quite a large majority of people in America are at least mildly opposed to the idea of political correctness. Although in the study they didn't define exactly what that meant, so they let people define it for themselves and then state their opinion on it.
I wonder what most of them. I mean, I wonder if most of their definitions were at least close to the correct, the actual definition of it. I mean, you'd think that they would have got a more accurate study if they would have all gave them the same definition and let them formulate their idea once they already know what the definition is. Because, I mean, their definitions could be fucking totally off from each other's, I don't know. It just doesn't seem as scientific as it could be.
Well, I think it's supposed to be a little ambiguous to partly to get ideas about what people think it means.
Oh, okay. That might be true.
I think that's kind of the point of it, but I agree that you would get more accurate. Well, in some ways, you get more accurate information if you clearly defined clearly said, this is what I mean by this. What do you think of that? But I think also people have their own preconceived notions about what it means and would probably still talk about that rather than the definition they were given.
Yeah, you're probably right. What do you think causes the? It does seem like a large percentage of people are overly selfish nowadays. Like I said, that might just be the technology thing, and maybe people have been that way all along. But I don't know. It seems like people worry about petty things way more now, and they just seem more self-involved than they have ever been. I mean, that's just my opinion. That could be way off base, but that's just what I think.
That's kind of what it looks like to me as well. People are in general quite they're quite much more concerned about themselves than others a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think what you said hit the nail right on the head when you said that people aren't they're just joining a tribe. They're not like thinking. I mean, like, if they agree on a couple of things on that platform, they just pick that platform instead of fucking sifting through the ideas and making an informed decision. I think they're just joining the tribe, essentially. And whatever that tribe says goes, that's what goes. I essentially think that's the way people make
I think a lot of people do that. I think some people do need to do that to an extent, though, because there is... I know this isn't particularly politically correct to say, but it is necessary to acknowledge that around half the population has below average intelligence.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. I would say
because that's how averages work, obviously.
100. Average is 100. That's the average IQ. They say average is about 100. Yeah, but but even. Go up to like 125, like the 125, 130 range, and then that's less than 13% of people in the world.
Mm-hmm. And, I don't know if you know.
That's roughly, even lower.
Yeah, I don't know if you know where you fall on that range.
I was tested by a psychologist when I was in 7th grade, and I scored about a 137.
Oh, okay. I'm somewhere up towards that range, but I've taken a few sort of just online ones which are notoriously perfectly accurate every time.
That's why I've taken a few of them too, but I always score in the 130s, the high 120s, a few of them are 140s, but I just take the psychologist because he's a trained, they're trained to do that. So
that's the thing. Also, you have to appreciate that there are different kinds of intelligence.
Right, exactly.
So someone may be well below average in the IQ department, but may still be a very, very nice person,
or very creative
at specific things.
Yeah, they could be very creative artisans. You don't have to be brilliant to be an artist.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again. That's the thing again. People are people, not just numbers.
Right.
But even people, you have to accommodate people who can't necessarily grasp the concepts that you can grasp.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Unfortunately, to be honest, I'm not saying this to toot my horn or anything, but just in general, when I go out in society, that's why I spend a lot of my time on the internet, because I can talk to like-minded people. If I must be honest, when I go and talk to normal people around, like my friends, locally, they talk about dumb, trivial shit that has like sports and cars and bullshit like that. I'm like, oh man,
absolutely.
I'm like, I don't really want to talk about it, can't we, like, when I try to bring shit up and they're like, wow, dude, you need a life. I'm like, well, you can think that if you want, but I just don't enjoy learning stuff. It is what it is.
I think that'll do for now. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please check out Unholy Mole's channel, and also subscribe to me, Bad Tempered Badger. See you all later.
Alright, I can see that I will have to take